Mercy Hospital stood like a silent giant in the middle of Chicago's bustling South Side, its white brick facade glowing faintly under the sodium streetlights. It was late February, and the wind off Lake Michigan cut through coats like a knife, carrying the distant wail of sirens and the low rumble of the Red Line train. Inside the orthopedic ward on the 4th floor, room 307 felt smaller than it was, walls painted institutional beige, the air thick with the sharp smell of antiseptic, rubber gloves, and the faint metallic undertone of blood that never quite washed away. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, never fully off even at 2:17 a.m. My husband, Terrence Venkel, lay in the center of it all, both legs encased in heavy white plaster casts that ran from thigh to ankle. Thick traction ropes and pulleys suspended them above the bed like some grotesque marionette. 3 days earlier, he'd been driving home from a late business meeting when, according to the police report, his brakes failed on the Dan Ryan Expressway. The car slammed into a concrete median at high speed. He was lucky to be alive, the ER doctor had said. Severe bilateral femoral fractures, nerve compression in the lower spine, possible permanent mobility issues. Prepare yourselves, the orthopedic surgeon had told me quietly in the hallway. Wheelchair for the long term isn't out of the question. Maya, 32 years old, senior forensic accountant at a firm in the Loop, had barely left his side since then. My days blurred into one long vigil, monitoring the foredrip, adjusting pillows so the cast didn't press on pressure points, helping the aides turn him every 2 hours to prevent bed sores, emptying the bedpan without making a sound, forcing smiles when nurses asked how I was holding up. My laptop sat open on the narrow windowsill during daylight hours so I could answer urgent client emails and review audit trails while keeping one eye on Terrence's monitors. At night, I curled in the folding chair beside his bed, blanket pulled tight, waking every time he groaned or the heart monitor changed tempo. My back ached constantly, a deep throbbing that radiated down my legs. My eyes burned from lack of real sleep. My skin felt tight and dry from the recycled hospital air. But every time I thought about going home, even for a shower, I pictured Terrence alone, in pain, calling my name into the empty room, and guilt pinned me in place. That night he stirred again, letting out a low, broken moan. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the chilled room. His eyebrows knit together in that familiar line of suffering I'd come to know too well. "Maya, water," he rasped, voice cracked and weak. I shot up instantly, legs numb and prickling from sitting too long. I poured from the plastic pitcher on the side table, inserted the bendy straw, and held it to his lips. "Slow sips, baby. Just a little at a time. It'll help with the dryness in your mouth." He took a few shaky pulls, eyes half open, bloodshot. Those same eyes that used to crinkle at the corners when he surprised me with takeout after my late nights at the office. Now they looked guilty, defeated. "This is too much on you," he whispered. "I was careless, stupid on the road. Now you're missing work, sleeping in a chair. I feel so damn useless." I managed a small smile, brushing damp hair from his forehead with my thumb. "Don't say that. We're married. When one falls, the other carries. If it was me lying here, you'd do the same. This is our life, Terrence, not someone else's. There's no shame in needing help." I dabbed the corner of his mouth with a tissue. He closed his eyes again, breathing shallow and even. A soft creak, the door opening. Head nurse Hattie Gable wheeled her medication cart inside. Late 40s, short salt and pepper hair tucked under her cap, face carved from years of night shifts and bad news. She rarely spoke beyond medical necessities, but over the past few days I'd caught her watching me, longer glances than usual, thoughtful, almost conflicted. "Bed 7 medication time," she said quietly, keeping her voice low so as not to disturb the roommate in the far bed. I stepped aside quickly. "Thank you, Nurse Gable. You've been wonderful." She didn't reply. Gloves snapped on. She lifted the sheet corner to check the casts, the catheter bag, the 4-line. Her movements were precise, practiced, but her eyes flicked, first to Terrence's face, then down to his legs, then to the 4 bag hanging above. "Ma'am," she said suddenly, turning to me, We're almost out of single saline bags on the cart. Could you run to the nurse's station and grab 2 more? This one's nearly empty, and I don't want to leave the line dry. It was an odd request. Usually nursing assistants handled supply runs, but her expression was serious, almost urgent. I nodded without questioning. As I passed her to leave the room, something small and cool was pressed into my palm with lightning speed. A folded piece of paper. I almost gasped, but when I looked up, Nurse Gable had already turned her back, pretending to fluff Terrence's pillow. With her free hand hidden behind her body, she raised one finger to her lips. Clear, unmistakable, be silent. My heart slammed against my ribs. Forensic instincts, honed from years of spotting hidden patterns in financial data, screamed that something was deeply wrong. I didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't speak. I walked straight out into the hallway, paper clenched in my fist. The corridor was empty at this hour. Only the low hum of the HVAC system and the distant clatter of a cleaning cart somewhere far off. I headed to the small kitchenette alcove near the elevators, the spot nurses jokingly called the camera-free zone because the nearest lens was angled the wrong way. Under the dim yellow bulb, I pressed my back to the wall, took a steadying breath, and unfolded the note with trembling fingers. Handwritten, hurried scrawl, ink slightly smeared. Stop coming at night. Check last night's security camera. 3 a.m. He's faking sleep. 5 words. 5 ordinary words that landed like a sledgehammer. My scalp prickled. My palms went instantly cold and slick. He's faking sleep. Terrence? The man I'd spent 3 sleepless nights caring for. The man whose career I'd supported through lean months. The man I'd promised forever to? I stared at the paper until the letters blurred. Then reality snapped back. I tore the note into tiny pieces, dropped them into the staff toilet, flushed twice, splashed cold water on my face until my cheeks stung, looked in the mirror and saw someone new, pale, exhausted, but with a hard, cold glint in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Get it together, Maya. You're not just a wife. You're an auditor. Anomalies don't get ignored. They get investigated. I grabbed the 2 saline bags from the supply shelf as instructed, walked back to room 307, face composed. Nurse Gable looked up as I entered. In her eyes I read 2 things clearly: pity and quiet determination. I handed her the bags. She hung one, checked the line, then murmured, almost to herself, he should be stable tonight. You should try to get some rest. We'll call if anything changes. I thanked her softly, but I didn't sit right away. I stood at the foot of the bed for a long moment, watching Terrence. He lay perfectly still, eyes closed, chest rising and falling in measured rhythm. To anyone else, he was a tragic figure, a hard-working husband brought low by a cruel accident, his loyal wife keeping vigil. To me, after that note, he looked like a stranger wearing a very convincing mask. Tonight, I thought I'll let you sleep. Tomorrow, I see that footage. For the first time in 3 days, I pulled the thin hospital blanket over myself on the folding chair, lay back, and stared at the ceiling tiles. I didn't close my eyes once. One thought looped endlessly in my head. Tomorrow changes everything. The first pale rays of February sunlight slipped through the half-closed blinds of room 307, painting thin stripes across Terrence's casts and the rumpled blanket on my folding chair. I hadn't slept, not really. My body felt heavy, like it had been filled with wet sand, but my mind was razor-sharp, every detail from Nurse Gable's note replaying on a loop. He's faking sleep. Those words had kept my eyes open all night, staring at the acoustic ceiling tiles until the patterns blurred. Terrence still lay motionless, eyes closed, face arranged in that familiar mask of suffering, brows slightly furrowed, lips parted just enough to let out the occasional soft, pained breath. To the untrained eye, he was the picture of a broken man fighting through agony. To me, after that note, every even inhale felt rehearsed. The door opened with a soft whoosh. Jasmine stepped in, balancing a large stainless steel thermos in one hand and a paper bag in the other. Her high ponytail bounced with each step, makeup fresh, smile wide and sunny as if this were a casual family visit instead of a hospital vigil at 7:12 a.m. Maya. Oh my gosh, you look wrecked. Those dark circles are brutal. Did you even close your eyes? I forced a tired smile, rubbing my neck. Not much. He was restless most of the night. She set the thermos on the side table. Bone broth, homemade, just like Grandma used to make back in Georgia. Low sodium, full of collagen. Supposed to help healing. I stayed up late simmering it so Terrence could have something nourishing. Terrence stirred at the sound of her voice. His eyelids fluttered open slowly, as if the effort cost him dearly. "Jazz, you're a godsend," he murmured, voice thin and cracked. Jasmine beamed, unscrewing the thermos lid. The rich, savory smell of chicken and herbs filled the room, cutting through the antiseptic haze. She poured a small amount into a plastic cup and held it toward him with a straw. "Here, sip slow. Maya, seriously, go home. Shower, change, nap. I've got him for the morning. You need a break before you collapse." I glanced at Terrence. His eyes were on me now, soft and pleading. "Maya, she's right. You've been here nonstop. I'll be okay with Jazz. Just don't be gone too long. I get anxious without you." The words landed differently today. Before the note, they would have melted me. Now they felt like careful lines from a script. I nodded. "Okay. I do need to stop by the office. There are some documents they need signed in person, and my laptop battery is dying anyway. I'll be back by lunch." Jasmine squeezed my arm. "Drive safe. Text when you're on your way back. We'll have lunch together. Maybe order from that Thai place you like." I gathered my coat, handbag, and laptop case. Before leaving, I leaned over Terrence, adjusted the thin pillow under his head, and kissed his forehead lightly. "Rest. Call if the pain gets worse." His hand caught mine for a second, weak grip, trembling just enough to sell the act. "I love you, Maya. You're keeping me alive." I pulled away gently. "Love you too." The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. Instead of heading to the main lobby elevators, I took the service stairs down to the underground parking garage. The air down there was colder, heavier, smelling of exhaust fumes, damp concrete, and motor oil. I found my car in the far corner, backed against a pillar where no one would casually walk by. Windows up, doors locked, engine off. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding since the kitchenette. I pulled out my phone and opened the thread with Ryan Caldwell. Message sent last night at 3:42 a.m. "Ryan, it's Maya. Emergency. Need access to Mercy Hospital internal security footage. Orthopedic ward, room 307. Last night, between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m. It's personal. Extremely confidential. I'll pay whatever it takes." His reply had come at 4:15 a.m. "Maya? Jesus, that's hospital-grade encrypted. Not impossible, but risky. Send me the exact room door photo for system ID, hospital full name/address, and any timestamps you remember. I'll see what I can do. But seriously, are you safe? This sounds bad." I had snapped a discreet photo of the room 307 signed days earlier, a habit from site audits. Always document identifiers. I attached it now along with Mercy Hospital Chicago details. A new message from Ryan popped up almost immediately. "Got it. Working on a backdoor through an old maintenance port. Give me 45 to 60 minutes. Stay somewhere with strong signal. When I send the link, use headphones, private browser, no downloads. It'll expire fast. And Maya, whatever's on there, breathe. Don't do anything rash till we talk." I tethered my laptop to my phone's hotspot, plugged in headphones, and waited. The garage was quiet except for the occasional car door slam far away and the drip of melting ice from a pipe overhead. My fingers drummed the steering wheel. Every minute stretched. 47 minutes later, the phone vibrated hard. Link. Active 30 minutes only. Click fast. Stay calm. I clicked. A black screen loaded, then resolved into crisp black and white security feed. Top-down angle from the ceiling camera in room 307. Timestamp, 1:58 a.m. There I was, exhausted me, bustling around, tidying the side table, leaning down to whisper goodnight to Terrence, then leaving.
Door closed.
Room silent. Terrence lay still for exactly 47 seconds. Then his eyes snapped open. No grogginess. No wince. Sharp. Alert. Scanning the empty room like a man checking for witnesses. He propped himself up on his elbows. Smooth movement. No grimace of pain. His casted legs lifted slightly, bent at the knees, rotated side to side as if testing range. He stretched one arm overhead, cracked his neck, then reached under the pillow for his phone. He unlocked it, no passcode visible. Must have disabled it when I was around. Scrolled, typed quickly. A faint smile crossed his face at whatever response came back. 3 minutes later, the door opened again. Jasmine slipped in carrying a large fast food bag. The camera had no audio, but her lips moved clearly. She gone? Terrence nodded, swung his legs down carefully, but without apparent difficulty, and sat fully upright on the edge of the bed.
Yeah, starving. Gimme.
She unpacked. Fried chicken pieces, biscuits, coleslaw, 2 cans of beer. They ate like people who hadn't seen real food in days, laughing silently, shoulders shaking. Terrence tore into a drumstick with gusto, wiped grease on the hospital sheet, took a long swig of beer. Jasmine leaned close, said something that made him chuckle again. Then she patted his cast playfully, right on the spot that supposedly caused him agony whenever I touched it. He pulled her closer, kissed her quickly. She giggled, swatted his arm. They talked for nearly 20 minutes, animated, relaxed. At one point, Terrence gestured toward the door, mimed crying, then pointed to his phone and made a money-rubbing motion. Jasmine nodded eagerly, eyes bright. I didn't need sound to read the story. The plan was clear in every gesture. Keep the act going, scare me with permanent disability, pressure me to sell the Bronzeville brownstone to cover medical costs, and save him from being a burden. Cash out, pay off debts, disappear together. My hands shook so badly, I had to pause the video. A pen I'd been holding clattered to the car floor mat. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper, forcing myself to keep watching until the end. Jasmine left first, slipping out quietly. Terrence lay back down, arranged the pillows, closed his eyes. Resumed the painful breathing pattern just minutes before I would have returned if I'd followed my usual routine. I closed the laptop, sat in silence. The garage lights flickered overhead. Then I texted Ryan. I saw it. All of it. Send everything you can on his debts. Bank trails, lenders, gambling. I need the full picture. His reply came fast. Already pulling. Preliminary. At least $200,000 in high-interest private loans, mostly tied to underground gambling rings. Transfers to shell accounts. One audio recording from a burner, him begging for more time. Sending encrypted folder now. Maya, what are you going to do? I stared at the message, then out at the concrete wall. I'm going to audit my marriage, I typed back. And when the numbers don't add up, I'm going to balance the books. I started the car. The engine rumble felt like the first real sound in hours. Time to go home. Secure documents. Change locks if needed. And then return to that room with a face as calm as his fake sleep. The game had changed. Terrence just didn't know it yet. The drive back to Mercy Hospital felt longer than it should have. Chicago traffic crawled along Lakeshore Drive, horns blaring in the cold drizzle that had started falling again. I kept the radio off. No music, no news, just the steady slap of wipers and the low hum of tires on wet asphalt. My mind was a spreadsheet now. Columns for evidence, footage saved, debt summaries from Ryan incoming, liabilities, Terrence's gambling loans, Jasmine's complicity, assets, the Bronzeville brownstone deeds safely locked in my safe at home, passwords changed on every account, and next actions, play along, gather more proof, don't tip my hand. I parked in the same far corner of the garage, took 3 deep breaths, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, pale but composed, and forced the soft, worried wife expression back onto my face. The elevator ride up felt like ascending into a different world, the one where I still pretended everything was normal. When I stepped into room 307 just before noon, The scene was almost theatrical. Terrence lay with his eyes half closed, breathing in shallow, labored pulls. Jasmine sat on the edge of the visitor chair, scrolling her phone, but she jumped up when she saw me. "Maya, you're back early. How was the office?" "Busy," I said quietly, setting my bag down. They needed original signatures on some client docs. "Everything okay here?" Jasmine nodded quickly, too quickly. "He had a rough morning. Pain spiked around 10. I called the nurse. They gave him extra morphine. He's been dozing since." Terrence stirred at the sound of my voice. His eyelids fluttered open slowly, deliberately. "Maya, you're here." His voice cracked just right. Weak, grateful. He reached out a trembling hand. I took it, squeezed gently. "Of course I'm here. Jasmine said you had a bad spell." He winced as if the movement hurt. "It comes in waves. But knowing you're coming back, it helps." Jasmine hovered nearby, twisting the hem of her sweater. "I was just telling him he needs to eat more of the broth." He barely touched it. I nodded, moving to the side table. The thermos was still warm. I poured a little into a cup and held it for him. He sipped obediently, eyes locked on mine, searching, perhaps, for any sign I suspected. Inside my head, the video looped, him laughing, grease on his fingers, slapping Jasmine's thigh like they were carefree lovers on a date night. I kept my voice steady. The doctor mentioned physical therapy might start soon. "We'll get through this." Terrence's grip tightened fractionally. "Maya, what if I can't walk again? What if I'm stuck like this? You don't deserve to be tied to a burden." The line was perfect, heartbreaking, guilt-inducing. Yesterday, it would have torn me apart. Today, it just confirmed the script. I leaned in, brushed his hair back. "Don't talk like that. We'll figure it out. Together." Jasmine watched us, eyes darting between our faces. I caught her flinch when I said, "Together." Over the next few days, the performance intensified from all sides. Miss Gladys arrived every afternoon like clockwork, thin frame wrapped in an old wool coat, rosary beads clicking in her fingers. She'd sit by the bed, hold Terrence's hand, and cry softly while staring at me with a mix of pleading and accusation. "Maya, honey," she'd start, voice quavering, "I know this house means the world to you, your parents' gift, but my boy, he's suffering. The doctors say surgery could help, but it's expensive. If we sold the brownstone, we could pay cash, get him the best care. Please, think about it." I'd nod slowly, eyes downcast. "I'm thinking, Miss Gladys. It's a big decision. I need to review the insurance policy first, talk to a realtor about fair market value. I don't want to rush and lose money we might need later." She'd sigh, wipe her eyes. "Just don't wait too long. He's getting worse." Terrence would chime in weakly. "Mom, don't pressure her. Maya's doing everything she can." But his eyes, when Miss Gladys wasn't looking, would flick to me with calculation. Andre came most evenings after his delivery shifts. He was quieter than the others, always standing near the door, arms crossed, watching. One night, as I walked him to the elevator, he stopped me in the hallway. "Maya, I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy." He glanced back toward the room. "Sometimes I come in early, before visiting hours. I hear him talking on the phone, normal voice, laughing even. Then he sees me and starts moaning like he's dying. It's off." I met his gaze steadily. For the first time, I let a sliver of truth show. "I know, Andre. I've seen things too. But please, don't confront him yet. I'm handling it." He swallowed hard, nodded. "Okay. But if you need anything at all, you call me. Your family. Real family." His words stung in a good way, the first genuine kindness I'd felt in days. Jasmine, meanwhile, was unraveling at the edges. Her smiles grew forced, her perfume heavier, as if trying to mask fierce sweat. One evening she lingered after bringing dinner. Takeout she claimed was from a friend, but I recognized the bag from the same fried chicken place in the video. "Maya," she said quietly when Terrence was asleep, "can we talk? Alone." We stepped into the hallway. She fidgeted, eyes on the floor. I feel awful. You've been so good to me, letting me stay, helping with job applications. And now, with everything, I just want to say I'm sorry if I've added to your stress. She looked up, eyes glistening. For a second, I thought she might confess. But then she blinked, forced a smile. Never mind. I'm just tired. Forget I said anything. She slipped back inside before I could respond. Ryan's updates kept coming. Encrypted files with more damning details. Wire transfers to known loan shark accounts. Gambling site logs showing six-figure losses over 18 months. Even a burner phone recording of Terrence pleading. 2 more weeks. The house sells, I swear on my life. Don't send anyone yet. I met attorney Harlan Sterling the next morning in his office, overlooking the Chicago River. Tall windows, leather chairs, the faint smell of coffee and old books. He reviewed the footage on his secure laptop, face impassive. Clear fraud, he said finally. Staged injury for sympathy/insurance gain. Conspiracy to defraud you of property. The deaths are his alone, gambling-related, not marital. We can file for divorce immediately, seek protective order on the brownstone deed, and, if you want, pursue criminal referral for insurance fraud. I leaned forward. I don't want jail time for him yet. I want him exposed, publicly, painfully, but only when they push hardest. Let them think I'm caving on the house sale. Build the pressure. When the lenders show up again, that's when we drop the hammer. Sterling studied me for a long moment. You're playing a dangerous game. I've audited worse liars, I said. This time the stakes are personal. He nodded slowly. We'll prepare the filings quietly. Keep recording everything, texts, conversations if legal in Illinois, one-party consent. When you're ready, we move. Back at the hospital that afternoon, the push intensified. Miss Gladys arrived with printouts from a realtor friend. Look, comps show the brownstone could fetch $1.1 million easy. Cash offer possible in days. Think of Terrence's future. Terrence squeezed my hand, eyes welling. Maya, I hate asking, but if it means walking again. I looked at him, really looked. The man who'd eaten fried chicken and planned to leave me broke and alone. I'll meet the realtor tomorrow, I said softly. We'll get a good price. Their relief was palpable. Miss Gladys hugged me. Terrence cried, real tears, or so it seemed. But inside, my ledger was balanced. Every fake sob, every pressure tactic, every lie added to the column of proof. The trap was set. They just didn't know the auditor had already found the fraud. The next 48 hours passed in a slow, deliberate buildup, like watching a storm gather over Lake Michigan, dark clouds rolling in while the city pretended everything was still fine. I played my role flawlessly, the exhausted but devoted wife, slowly cracking under the pressure of love and duty. I met the realtor Terrence, and Miss Gladys kept mentioning a slick woman in her 50s named Carla who showed up at the hospital with glossy brochures and comps printed on thick cardstock. Bronzeville Market is hot right now, Carla said brightly, spreading papers across the rolling tray table while Terrence dozed. 3-story historic brownstones like yours? Easy 1.1 to 1.2 million. Cash buyers waiting. We could list tomorrow, close in 30 days. Miss Gladys clutched her rosary tighter, eyes shining with desperate hope. See, Maya? It's meant to be. For Terrence's sake. I scanned the papers carefully. Old habits from auditing real estate deals, then looked up with a small, tired smile. I'll think about the offer. I want to run it by my lawyer first, make sure everything's clean. No surprises. Carla nodded understandingly. Of course. Take your time, but not too much. Inventory moves fast. Terrence opened his eyes just enough to catch mine. Thank you, Maya. You're saving me. His voice cracked on cue. I squeezed his hand once, then excused myself to get coffee. In the hallway, I texted attorney Harlan Sterling. Realtor push started. They're quoting 1.1, 1.2 M. I'm stalling with lawyer review. Lender's still quiet. His reply came within minutes. Quiet for now. But Ryan's intercept show texts from one lender to Terrence. 48 hours or we visit. Keep recording. We're ready when they show. I returned to the room with 2 coffees from the cafeteria. Jasmine took one gratefully, but her hands shook slightly. Terrence sipped his, eyes following me like he was measuring how close I was to breaking. That evening, around 8:15 p.m., visiting hours were winding down. Miss Gladys was gathering her coat and purse, kissing Terrence's forehead one last time. Andre stood near the door, arms folded, silent as usual. Jasmine had just stepped out to grab ice chips. The door burst open without a knock. 3 men entered, broad shoulders, dark jackets, faces hard under the fluorescent light. No flowers, no get-well cards. Just cold purpose. The lead man, tall, shaved head, scar running along his left jaw, scanned the room and locked eyes on Terrence. Vankel. Time to visit an old friend. Terrence's reaction was instant and theatrical. He let out a loud, pained moan, clutching the bedsheet. Who are you? I'm seriously injured. Maya, call security. Miss Gladys rose, coat half on. This is a hospital room. You can't just barge in. The second man, stocky, tattoo creeping up his neck, snorted. Relax, lady. We're just here to check on our investment. Lead man stepped closer to the bed. $200K principal. Interest's been running hot. You said 2 weeks. That was 3 weeks ago. Where's our money? Terrence's voice rose in pitch, trembling perfectly. I told you. Maya's selling the house. It's happening. Few more days, I swear. Miss Gladys turned to me, eyes wide.
Maya?
Is this true? He owes them that much? I stood slowly, placing myself between the men and the bed. My voice came out calm, calmer than I felt. If you're here for Terrence's debts, state your business clearly. I'm his wife. Anything you have to say, you say to both of us. The lead man raised an eyebrow, amused. Wife, huh? Even better. Your husband promised payment by now. We don't like waiting. We especially don't like empty promises. Terrence moaned again, louder. Maya, tell them. The brownstone. Tell them it's happening. I looked down at him for a long moment. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and connected it wirelessly to the wall-mounted TV above the bed. The screen flickered to life. I have something to show you first, I said quietly. I hit play. The security footage from that 3 a.m. night filled the screen. Crystal clear, time-stamped, undeniable. Terrence sitting up easily, legs moving freely in the casts. Jasmine entering with the takeout bag. The 2 of them laughing, eating fried chicken, drinking beer. Terrence's voice. Ryan had managed to pull partial audio from a nearby hallway mic leak. She'll sell the house. $1 million plus.
Debt's gone.
Miami. You and me. The room went deathly silent except for the video's tinny sound. Miss Gladys gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God. Terrence, what is this? Andre stared at the screen as if it were burning him, his fists clenched at his sides. Jasmine, back from the ice machine, froze in the doorway, face draining of color. The cup slipped from her hand, ice scattered across the floor. Terrence bolted upright, too fast, too strong. The casts thumped against the bed frame. Maya, wait, listen. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? I repeated, voice ice cold. Not you faking your injuries? Not plotting with Jasmine to pressure me into selling my parents' house to cover your gambling debts? Not planning to run off together once the money came through? The lead lender let out a low whistle, then a short, harsh laugh. Well, damn. Kids got more nerve than brains. He turned to his companions. We're out. This ain't our family drama. To Terrence. Debt still stands. Last warning. The 3 men filed out without another word, door clicking shut behind them. The silence that followed was heavier than any before. Miss Gladys collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably, fists pounding weakly on Terrence's arm. You lied to me, to your own mother. How could you do this? Andre stepped forward, voice low and shaking with rage. You used her. Used all of us. For money? For her? He jerked his head toward Jasmine, who had backed against the wall, tears streaming. Jasmine slid down to the floor, knees to her chest. Maya,
I'm so sorry.
he said it was just temporary. That you'd understand later. Terrence looked at me. Really looked for the first time without the mask.
Fear.
Pure, raw fear. Maya, please. I was desperate. The debts, the pressure. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, I finished. You meant every word on that footage. Every plan to sell my home. Pay off your sharks. Leave me thinking I abandoned a disabled husband. I turned to Miss Gladys. I'm sorry you had to see this, but this is who he is. She didn't respond, just cried harder. To Andre. Thank you for believing your gut. I'm sorry it ended like this. Then to Terrence one last time. We're done. The divorce papers are already being drawn. The brownstone stays mine. Your debts stay yours. I picked up my bag, walked to the door. Behind me, Terrence's voice broke. Real this time, perhaps. Maya, don't leave me like this. I paused in the doorway, rain streaking the hallway window like tears. You left me first, I said quietly. Then I stepped out. The corridor lights felt too bright. My legs carried me to the elevators on autopilot. Outside, the February rain soaked through my coat in seconds, but I didn't care. I stood under the hospital awning, breathing in the cold, wet air. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel crushed. The performance was over. Now the real work began. Closing accounts, protecting assets, healing wounds I hadn't even known were there. But first, I needed to call Harlan Sterling. The hammer had dropped. The rain hit me like needles as I stepped out from under the hospital awning. Cold February water soaked through my coat in seconds, plastering my hair to my scalp, but I barely felt it. My body moved on autopilot, down the slick concrete steps, across the wet parking lot, into the car. I sat behind the wheel, without starting the engine, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The hospital lights blurred through the rain-streaked windshield like distant stars in a storm. For a long minute, I just breathed.
In, out, in, out.
The sobs I'd held back in the room finally came. Quiet, shuddering, not from heartbreak anymore, but from sheer exhaustion and the sharp, clean relief of truth. I cried for the woman who'd spent 3 days and nights believing in a lie. For the years I'd given to a man who saw my love as leverage. For the house my parents had built with their hands, the one place that had always felt safe, almost sold off like cheap collateral. When the tears slowed, I wiped my face with the sleeve of my coat, started the car, and drove. Not home, not yet. I needed distance. I headed south on Lakeshore Drive, windows cracked just enough to let the wet wind slap my face awake. The city lights smeared past, the glowing Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, the dark expanse of the lake, the towering silhouettes of downtown. Chicago looked different tonight, colder, sharper, but also clearer. I pulled into a quiet side street near Hyde Park, parked under a street lamp, and called attorney Harlan Sterling. It was after hours, but he answered on the second ring.
Maya.
I take it the lender showed. They did. And I showed the footage. On the room TV. Everyone saw. A pause. Then his voice, calm and measured. How bad was the fallout? Miss Gladys collapsed crying. Andre looked like he'd been punched. Jasmine hit the floor. Terrence, he tried to explain, but there was nothing left to say. Sterling exhaled slowly. You're safe? They didn't get physical?
No.
They laughed it off and left. Said the debt was still his problem. Good. That keeps them out of criminal conspiracy charges for now. I've got the divorce petition drafted. Irreconcilable differences, fraud allegation attached for asset protection. We file tomorrow morning. I'll also motion for an emergency restraining order on the brownstone deed transfer. No one touches it without court approval. I lean my head back against the seat. What about the debts? The lenders, will they come after me? Not if we prove they're gambling-related and premarital in origin. Ryan's financial trail shows most originated before your wedding. I'll subpoena bank records to confirm. You won't be liable. I closed my eyes. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without this. You'd figure it out. You already did the hard part, facing the truth. Now we clean up the mess. We talk logistics for another 10 minutes, filing timeline, witness statements. Nurse Gable had already agreed to testify if needed, how to handle any insurance fraud referral to the authorities later. When we hung up, I felt the first real weight lift. I drove home then, the Bronzeville brownstone that had almost been lost. The familiar porch light was on, timer still set for my parents' days. I parked in the driveway, sat for a moment looking at the 3-story brick house with its tall windows and wrought iron railing. Memories flooded in. Dad teaching me to ride a bike on the sidewalk, Mom's laughter from the kitchen while she baked peach cobbler, the way the hardwood floors creaked under my feet when I came home from college. I went inside, locked the door behind me, deadbolt, chain, the works. The house smelled faintly of old wood and the lavender candles I used to burn when Terrence was away on business trips. I walked straight to the bedroom safe, pulled out the deed, my birth certificate, savings bonds, everything with my name alone, and placed them in a fireproof bag. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and methodically changed every password again. Bank, email, investment accounts, even the home security system. Terrence had known them once. He never would again. My phone buzzed, Terrence's number. I stared at it for 10 rings before answering, voice flat. Maya, please come back. Let me explain. It was a mistake. The debts, they pressured me. I was scared. I let him talk for 30 seconds, rambling excuses, promises to change, tears I could hear through the line. When he paused for breath, I spoke quietly. You had choices, Terrence. Every day you chose to lie, to eat chicken and beer while I spoon-fed you broth, to plan a future without me. There's nothing left to explain. Maya, goodbye. I hung up, blocked the number, then blocked Jasmine's, Miss Gladys's, even a few mutual friends who might relay messages. The house was silent except for the tick of the old wall clock. I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, still with the faded floral wallpaper, and lay on the twin bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept. Deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, Harlan Sterling filed the divorce papers. By afternoon, a process server delivered them to Terrence at the hospital. I didn't go back. I hired a private aid service to handle his discharge paperwork and any follow-up care. I paid for 3 months in advance, my final act of obligation, then cut that cord too. Days blurred into weeks. I threw myself into work, bearing the pain in spreadsheets, audits, late-night client calls. The firm noticed my focus. I got assigned a high-profile fraud case in Philadelphia. I welcomed the travel. Chicago felt too small, too full of ghosts. On the first Philly trip, I met Elias Thorne. Lead structural engineer on the project, mid-40s, quiet voice, steady hands. Widowed 4 years earlier, his wife killed in a car accident on I-95. He didn't volunteer the information. It came up naturally over a team dinner when someone asked why he never wore a wedding ring. Lost her, he said simply. No drama, no self-pity, just fact. Later, walking back to the hotel, he fell into step beside me. You've been quiet tonight, he said. Long week. He nodded. If you ever want to talk, not about work, I'm around. No pressure. I glanced at him. Tall, calm eyes, no hint of agenda. Maybe, I said. We exchanged numbers for project questions. But the next night he texted. Coffee tomorrow? No blueprints. Just caffeine. I hesitated, then replied. Yes. We met at a small cafe near Rittenhouse Square. Rain again, but softer. He ordered black coffee, I got tea. We talked about nothing important at first. Favorite Chicago spots he'd visited once, worst construction disasters we'd seen, the way Philly cheesesteaks were overrated. Then he asked gently, what brought you here? The project or something else? I stared into my cup. Escape, mostly. Bad marriage. Worse ending. He didn't pry. Just nodded. I get that. After my wife. I buried myself in work too. It helps. Until it doesn't. We sat in comfortable silence after that. No rush. No expectations. When we parted, he said, text when you're back in town. If you want. I did. Slow texts turned to calls. Calls turned to more coffee when I was in Philly. Walks along the Schuylkill River. Shared stories, mine halting at first, his patient. He never pushed. Never asked for more than I offered. One evening, after a long day on site, we sat on a bench watching rowers glide past. "You're different," I said suddenly.
How?
"You don't fill silence with noise. You let it be." He smiled faintly. "Learn the hard way. Silence isn't empty if you're with the right person." I looked at him, really looked. No mask. Just a man who'd known loss and chosen kindness anyway. For the first time in months, my heart didn't flinch at the thought of trusting again. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was possibility. And after everything, possibility felt like enough. The weeks after the hospital confrontation settled into a strange, quiet rhythm, like the calm after a building collapses, when the dust hangs thick, but the noise has finally stopped. I didn't go back to Mercy. I couldn't. Every hallway, every beep of a monitor, every smell of antiseptic would have pulled me back into the role I'd played for too long. The devoted wife, the sacrificial caretaker, the fool who believed love meant enduring anything. Instead, I lived in the Bronzeville brownstone again, alone but not lonely. The house felt different now. The creaks in the floorboards sounded like old friends saying hello. I slept in my childhood bedroom some nights, windows open to the Chicago spring that was finally arriving, birds returning, crocuses pushing through the front yard dirt, the faint green smell of thawing earth. I cleaned rooms I hadn't touched in years, Mom's sewing corner, Dad's old tool bench in the basement, touching their things like I was saying thank you for the anchor they'd left me. Work kept me steady. The Philadelphia project wrapped successfully. My firm offered a promotion if I'd take on more travel. I said yes. Airports, hotel rooms, conference calls, they were neutral ground, places where no one knew my story, where I could be just Maya the auditor, sharp and unflinching. Elias Thorne became a quiet constant. Our texts were simple at first. Landed safe. Tough meeting today? Then longer calls on nights when jet lag kept me awake. He never asked for details about Terrence unless I offered them. When I did, haltingly, over a late-night call from a Philly hotel, he listened without judgment. "Sounds like you carried more than anyone should," he said once. "You're allowed to put it down now." I laughed softly, surprised by how much those words eased something inside me. "I'm trying." We met whenever my schedule overlapped with his. Coffee turned to dinners, quiet places with good food and no crowds. Walks along the Schuylkill when the weather warmed. He told me about his wife slowly, in pieces. How they'd met in college, the road trip they took after graduation, the way she laughed at his terrible puns. The accident that took her. He spoke of it factually, without drama, but I saw the shadow in his eyes. I stopped looking forward for a while, he admitted one evening as we sat on a bench watching the sunset paint the river gold. Just existed. Then one day, I realized existing wasn't enough. I started small projects, people, little risks. "You're doing that too." I looked at him. "You make it sound easy." "It's not, but it's worth it." Our hands brushed once. Accidental at first, then intentional. He didn't push. Neither did I. It felt safe. Like standing on solid ground after months of quicksand. Then Andre called. It was a Thursday afternoon in late April. I was in my office downtown, reviewing a fraud report, when my phone lit up with his name. Maya. His voice was thick, strained. "It's Mom." I set the pen down. "What happened?" She's very weak.
Hospital again.
Doctors say days, maybe less. She keeps asking for you, saying she needs to see you before. I closed my eyes. Miss Gladys, thin, tearful, always clutching her rosary, flashed in my mind. The woman who'd pressured me hardest to sell the house, who'd called me stubborn, who'd looked at me like I held her son's life in my hands. But also the woman who'd once hugged me at my wedding and whispered, "Welcome to the family, baby girl." "I'll come," I said quietly. "Send the address." Andre exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you. Room 412, second floor, St. Luke's on the north side." I left work early, drove north through rush-hour traffic, parked in another hospital garage that smelled exactly like Mercy's. The antiseptic hit me the moment the elevator doors opened. Same sharp bite, same undercurrent of sickness and bleach. I walked the hallway feeling like I was moving through water. Andre met me outside the room. He looked older, lines around his eyes deeper, shoulders slumped. "She's been in and out," he whispered. "But she's lucid when she's awake. Maya, thank you for coming. I know it's hard." I touched his arm. Family is family, even when it hurts. Inside, Miss Gladys lay small and frail under the thin hospital blanket. Machines beeped softly. Her skin was paper-thin, veins visible like blue rivers under the surface. When she saw me, her eyes, still sharp despite everything, lit with recognition. "Maya." Her voice was a thread. "You came." I pulled the chair close, took her cold hand. "I'm here." Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, tracking down her temples into the pillow. "I was wrong. So wrong. I only saw my boy. I didn't see you. I pushed. I blamed. I let him hurt you." I squeezed her hand gently. "It's in the past, Miss Gladys. You loved him. Mothers do that." She shook her head weakly. "Love blinded me. I should have protected you too. You were good to us. Better than we deserved." Andre stood by the window, head bowed, wiping his eyes. Miss Gladys's breathing grew shallower. "If there's a next life, I hope I'm just a stranger who can be kind to you. No expectations. No demands. Just kindness." Her words cut deeper than any accusation ever had. I bowed my head, my own tears falling onto our joined hands. "In this life," I whispered, "our debts are paid. You can rest now." She nodded faintly. Her fingers tightened once, weak but deliberate, then relaxed. The monitor lines stretched long and flat. A soft, final tone filled the room. Andre broke. He sank to his knees beside the bed, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I stood, placed a hand on his back, let him cry. Later, after the nurses came and went after the paperwork, Andre walked me to the elevator. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, "for coming, for being here at the end." "You don't have to. Just live well, Andre. Make her proud from wherever she is." He nodded, eyes red. "I will. And Maya, if you ever need anything, I'm here. Real family." I hugged him, brief, fierce, then stepped into the elevator. Outside, the spring night was mild. Stars peeked through the city haze. I drove home slowly, windows down, letting the air wash over me. When I got to the brownstone, Elias was waiting on the porch steps, coffee in hand, jacket slung over his shoulder. He'd driven up from Philly on a hunch after I texted him I was heading to the hospital. "You didn't have to come," I said, but my voice cracked. "I wanted to." He stood, pulled me into a quiet hug. No words, just solid warmth. We sat on the porch swing until the sky lightened. I told him everything. Miss Gladys's words, the flatline tone, the strange peace that came after. He listened. Then, "You gave her grace she didn't earn. That's strength, Maya, not weakness." I leaned my head on his shoulder. For the first time since the note in the kitchenette, I felt the beginning of something like healing. The goodbye to Miss Gladys wasn't an ending. It was a door closing, softly, finally, on a chapter I'd never have to revisit. And in its place, something new was quietly opening. The porch swing creaked softly under our weight as the first hints of dawn turned the Chicago sky from black to bruised purple. Elias sat beside me, one arm resting along the back of the swing, not quite touching but close enough that I could feel his warmth cutting through the lingering chill. We hadn't spoken much after I finished telling him about Miss Gladys, the flatline tone, Andre's broken sobs, the way her fingers had relaxed in mine like she'd finally let go of something heavy. He just listened, nodding now and then, letting the silence do the holding. After a while he said quietly, "You gave her peace at the end. That's more than most people get." I looked down at my hands, still cold from the night air, and saw the faint red mark where her grip had been. I didn't do it for her. I did it for me, to close the door without hatred left inside. He nodded slowly. Hatred's heavy. It stays longer than love sometimes. We sat until the birds started calling from the elm trees lining the street. Elias stood first, offered his hand. Come on. You need real sleep. I'll make coffee when you wake up. I took his hand, warm, steady, and let him lead me inside. He didn't stay the night. He never pushed boundaries like that. He just brewed a pot of coffee, left it on warm, kissed my forehead, and drove back to his hotel. The simple gesture, coffee waiting, no expectations, felt like the kindest thing anyone had done for me in years. Life moved forward in small, deliberate steps after that. The divorce finalized quickly. Harlan Sterling handled everything with surgical precision. Terrence didn't contest. The evidence was too overwhelming. No alimony, no claim on the brownstone, no shared debts. The judge signed off in under 10 minutes. I walked out of the courthouse into bright May sunlight, papers in hand, feeling lighter than I had since before the accident. Andre called a few weeks later. His voice was quieter than usual. Maya, it's Terrence. My stomach tightened, but not with the old panic. Just a dull, distant ache. What happened? Stroke. Bad one. He's in the ICU at County. Doctors say he passed the worst, but right side paralyzed. Speech slurred. He's asking for you. Not demanding, just asking. I told him I'd let you know. No pressure. I sat on the edge of the kitchen table, staring at the spot where Mom used to roll out pie dough. I'll think about it. Andre exhaled. I figured. Just if you decide not to, I understand. Completely. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Elias was in town that weekend. We'd planned a quiet dinner. Over pasta at a small Italian place near the lake, I told him. You don't have to go, he said simply. But if you do, it's not weakness. It's finishing what you started with your terms. I nodded. I know. I don't want any loose ends. Not anymore. The next afternoon, I drove to Cook County Hospital. Different building, same smell. ICU corridors were quieter than the ortho ward. More machines, softer lights, heavier air. Andre met me at the nurse's station, eyes red-rimmed but steady.
He's awake. Barely.
But he knows you're coming. Room 518. Terrence lay in the bed, thinner than I remembered, right side of his face drooping like melted wax. Tubes snaked from his arm. Monitors beeped in slow rhythm. When he saw me through the glass door, his good eye widened. His mouth worked, but only garbled sounds came out. I stepped inside. Andre stayed in the hallway, giving us space. I pulled the chair close. I'm here. Terrence's left hand, still strong, reached across the sheet. I didn't take it right away. I just looked at him. He tried again. Yeah? The word mangled, but clear enough, Maya. I spoke slowly, voice even. You wanted to see me. I'm here. Say what you need to say. Tears leaked from his good eye, tracking down the paralyzed side. He struggled, lips moving. SSS, Ori.
Sorry.
Then again, clearer, sorry. I waited. He swallowed, throat working. Hurt you? Bad. No excuse. His breathing hitched. If back never meet you better. No hurt. I felt something shift inside. Not anger, not pity, just a quiet, final acceptance. If we'd never met, I said softly, I wouldn't have learned what real strength looks like. What trust costs. What it means to stand up after being broken. You taught me expensive lessons, Terrence. But I paid. The rest is yours to carry. He stared at me, tears flowing freely now. His good hand trembled toward mine again. I placed my palm flat on the sheet between us, not touching, but close. I don't hate you anymore, but we can't go back. Don't hold on. Live whatever time you have left the best you can. That's all. A single tear rolled from his eye onto the pillow. He nodded, small, jerky movement. I stood. Goodbye, Terrence. I walked out. Andre was waiting. You okay? He asked. I am, I said. And for the first time, it was true. Months passed. Elias and I grew closer, still slow, still careful. Dinners became weekends together. Weekends became trips, short drives to Door County, walks on Lake Michigan beaches. He met my friends. I met his mother, a gentle woman with silver hair who hugged me on the first visit and said, "You look like someone who's earned peace." One evening in early fall, Elias took me to a quiet overlook outside the city. Stars sharp overhead, wind carrying the scent of turning leaves. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. No kneeling, no speech. Just him opening it to show a simple silver band, no diamond, just clean lines. "Maya," he said, "I can't promise a life without pain, but I can promise truth. Patience. I'll be here when it's easy, when it's hard. If you're ever ready, I want to walk the rest with you." I looked at the ring, then at him. Steady eyes, no pressure, just quiet hope. I took the box, closed it gently, slipped it into my purse. "Not yet," I said. "But soon. I need to be sure I'm saying yes to us, not to filling a hole." He smiled, small, real. "I can wait." We drove back in comfortable silence. His hand on the gear shift, mine resting near it. No rush. Andre called a few weeks later. Voice heavy. "Maya, Terrence didn't make it. Another stroke. This one he didn't wake up." I stood by the kitchen window, watching leaves swirl in the yard. "When?" "Early this morning." I exhaled slowly. "Funeral?" "Small. Next Tuesday. You don't have to come." "I will," I said. "Not for him. For closure. For you." The funeral was sparse, small chapel on the south side, maybe 20 people. Andre handled everything. Terrence lay in the casket looking peaceful, younger somehow, stripped of schemes and lies. I stood at the back during the service. No tears. Just a quiet regret for a life wasted on shortcuts, for chances never taken. Afterward, I lit a single incense stick at the front, bowed my head. From now on, all debts settled. Outside, Elias waited by my car. He didn't ask how it went, just opened the passenger door, drove me home in silence that felt safe. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned to him. "I'm ready," I said. He looked at me, question in his eyes. "To say yes. To the ring. To us." He smiled, slow, bright, the first full one I'd seen without shadow. We went inside. I took the box from my purse, slipped the silver band onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Elias pulled me close. "Whenever you're ready," he whispered. "We take it at your pace." I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, real. The past was buried. The future was ours to build. Quietly, honestly, together. The silver band on my finger felt light, almost weightless, compared to the heavy gold ring Terrence had once placed there with promises that turned to ash. I turned my hand slowly in the kitchen light that first evening, watching how it caught the soft glow from the pendant lamp above the table. No diamond to flash and demand attention, just clean silver, simple and honest. Elias had chosen it that way on purpose, no pressure, no show. "It's a promise, not a performance," he'd said when I slipped it on. "We define what it means." We didn't rush to set a date. No grand announcements to friends or family. No Pinterest boards or venue tours. We simply let the ring be there, a quiet marker that something had shifted from possibility to intention. Life continued in its gentle rhythm. Work for both of us, weekend drives when schedules aligned, evenings where one of us cooked, or attempted to, and the other cleaned up laughing at the results. Elias started spending more time at the brownstone. Not moving in, not yet, but staying over on Fridays and Saturdays. He respected the house like it was sacred, never leaving shoes on the hardwood, always asking before rearranging a throw pillow, touching the old family photos on the mantel with quiet reverence. One night, he paused in front of the black and white picture of my parents on their wedding day, Mom in a simple lace dress, Dad grinning like he'd won the world. "They look happy," he said softly. "They were," I replied, coming up beside him. "Dad used to say the house wasn't just bricks, It was their promise to each other and to me. A place that would always stand. Elias nodded. It still does. And now it has room for new promises. We didn't talk about marriage constantly. It came up naturally, over coffee on the porch swing, during long drives to nowhere in the middle of watching old movies on the living room couch. Spring wedding, he asked once. Or summer, when the lake's warm? I'd shrug and smile. Whenever it feels right. No deadline. He never pushed. That patience, earned through his own grief, made me feel safe in a way I hadn't known I still needed. Andre visited once that summer. He'd moved back to a small town in southern Illinois, opened a modest auto repair shop with the savings he'd scraped together. He showed up on a Saturday afternoon with a box of peaches from a roadside stand, reminded me of your mom's cobbler, and a quiet hope in his eyes that we could still be something like family. We sat on the porch. Elias joined us with iced tea. Andre looked at the ring on my finger, then at Elias and smiled, small but genuine. Looks good on you, he said. It does, I agreed. We talked about everything and nothing, his shop's first big client, the way the town smelled like fresh-cut grass in June, how Miss Gladys would have loved seeing the house still standing strong. He didn't ask about Terrence's funeral or the past. He just said, I'm glad you found someone who treats you right. You deserve that. Before he left, he hugged me, longer than usual. If you ever need a brother, I'm here. Not the Vankel kind, the real kind. I watched his truck disappear down the street, feeling the last knot in my chest loosen. Elias's mother came to Chicago that fall. We drove her to the brownstone for Sunday dinner. She was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and warm brown eyes that missed nothing. She walked through the house slowly, touching the banister, looking at the family photos, listening when I told her stories about Mom's cooking and Dad's garden. At the table, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans from the farmer's market. She took my hand across the table. You've been through fire, child, she said. But fire refines. I see that in you. And in my son's eyes when he looks at you. This house that's welcomed a lot of love. It'll welcome more. I blinked back tears. Thank you for saying that. She squeezed my hand. You're already family to me, ring or no ring. But when the day comes, I'll be there with bells on. Elias watched us, eyes soft. Later, when she'd gone to the guest room to rest, he pulled me close in the kitchen.
She means it, he said.
And so do I. Winter came gentle that year, no brutal blizzards, just soft snowfalls that blanketed the city in quiet. Elias and I spent Christmas at the brownstone. Lights on the porch, a small tree in the living room, carols playing low. No big gifts, just presents. He gave me a leather-bound journal, for the days you want to write what you couldn't say before. I gave him a framed photo of us on the lakefront at sunset. So, you remember we made it here. New Year's Eve we stayed in, no parties, no crowds. We cooked dinner together. He burned the garlic bread. I laughed until my sides hurt, then bundled up and walked to the lakefront. The city skyline glittered across the water, fireworks blooming in the distance at midnight. He turned to me under the street lamp light, snowflakes catching in his hair. Maya, he said, I've waited because you needed time. But I'm not waiting out of duty. I'm here because I choose you, every day. If you're ready, I'd like to marry you. Not tomorrow. Not in a rush. Just when you say the word. I looked up at him. Steady gaze, no fear, just love worn soft by patience. I'm ready, I said. Not for a big show. For us. For quiet vows, close friends, this house filled with people who matter.
Spring, maybe.
When everything starts again. He smiled, slow, bright, the kind that reached his eyes and stayed. Spring it is. We kissed under the falling snow, gentle, certain, like coming home. The months that followed were preparation without frenzy. We chose a small venue, a garden chapel near the lake, blooming lilacs in May. Guest list tiny. Andre, a few work friends, Elias's mother and sister, Ryan Caldwell, who'd become a quiet ally through everything. No extravagance. Just honest promises spoken under open sky. I bought a simple white dress, knee-length, lace sleeves, no veil. Elias chose a gray suit, no tie. We wrote our own vows, short, real. Mine, I promise truth, even when it's hard. Patience when I'm scared. And love that doesn't ask you to be anything but you. His, I promise to stand beside you, not in front. To listen when words fail. To choose you every day, in the quiet moments and the loud ones. You're not a chapter one finish. You're the story I want to keep writing. We exchanged rings, same simple silver bands, engraved inside with the date we first said yes to possibility. Afterward, a backyard reception at the brownstone, long tables under string lights, food from a local caterer, laughter echoing off the brick walls. Andre gave a toast to Maya, who taught me what real strength looks like, and to Elias, who saw it and never looked away. Elias's mother hugged me tight. Welcome home, sweetheart. When the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Elias and I sat on the porch swing again, same one where we talked that first night after Miss Gladys.
He slipped his arm around me.
No regrets. I leaned into him.
None.
Only gratitude. The ring caught the moonlight. Simple.
Steady. Ours.
The past didn't vanish. It just became smaller, a shadow behind us instead of a wall in front. And in its place, this life.
Quiet. Honest. Loved.
The wedding happened on a soft Saturday in mid-May, the kind of Chicago spring day where the air smells like fresh-cut grass and possibility. We chose the little garden chapel tucked behind the Adler Planetarium, small stone walls covered in climbing ivy, open-air pavilion overlooking Lake Michigan, white folding chairs arranged in neat rows under strings of bare bulbs that would glow gold at dusk. No more than 30 people. Andre drove up from southern Illinois in his freshly washed pickup, wearing a navy suit he bought just for the day. Ryan Caldwell flew in from Seattle, still the same lanky cybersecurity guy who'd once hacked a hospital feed to save my sanity. Elias's mother and sister came from Ohio, carrying homemade lemon bars and quiet pride, a handful of my work colleagues, a few old college friends who'd stuck around through the worst. No extravagant guest list. No distant relatives we barely knew. Just the people who'd seen us through shadows and still chose to stand in the light. I wore the simple white dress, knee-length lace sleeves, soft chiffon skirt that moved with the breeze off the lake. No veil, no train, just pearl earrings my mother had worn on her own wedding day. Elias waited at the end of the short aisle in a light gray suit, no tie, collar open, hands clasped in front of him like he was trying not to fidget. When he saw me step out from behind the ivy-covered arch, his smile broke wide, slow at first, then full, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made my chest ache in the best way. The officiant was a friend of Elias's sister, soft-spoken, no long sermon, just a few words about love as a daily choice, not a fairy tale. We read our vows under the open sky. Mine first. Elias, I spent too long believing love meant carrying everything alone. You taught me it means walking side by side, even when the path is uneven. I promise to tell you the truth, even when my voice shakes. To listen when words fail. To choose you every morning not because I have to, but because I want to. You're not my savior. You're my partner. And that's more than I ever dreamed. His turn. Maya, I lost someone once and thought the story ended there. Then you walked in, quiet, strong, carrying scars I recognized because I had my own. I promised to stand with you, not in front of you. To hold space when you need silence. To celebrate your victories and share your burdens. I don't want perfection. I want real. Every messy, beautiful piece of it. You're not a replacement. You're the beginning of something new. I choose you today, tomorrow, always. We exchanged the silver bands, same simple design, now engraved inside with the date we first said yes to possibility, May 18th, 2025. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Elias cupped my face gently, thumbs brushing my cheeks, and kissed me, slow, certain, like sealing a promise that had already been kept in 1,000 small ways. The small crowd clapped and cheered. Andre hooped loudest, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. The reception was in the backyard of the brownstone. Long wooden tables draped in white linen, mason jars filled with wildflowers from the farmer's market, string lights crisscrossing overhead. Food was simple: grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, cornbread, peach cobbler made from Mom's old recipe. No DJ, just a Bluetooth speaker playing soft jazz and old soul. Sam Cooke, Etta James, Otis Redding. People mingled, laughed, told stories. Andre pulled me aside near the porch steps. "You look happy," he said. "Like, really happy, not the pretend kind." "I am," I told him. "And you? Shop doing okay?" He nodded. "Steady customers. I'm even thinking of hiring a kid from town. Life's good. Quiet but good." I hugged him tight. "I'm glad. And thank you for being the one who saw the truth before I could say it out loud." He shrugged, eyes shining. "Family looks out for family."
You're still mine.
Elias's mother found me later, pressing a small velvet pouch into my hand. Inside, a delicate gold locket with a tiny photo of her and Elias's father on their wedding day. "Wear it if you want," she said. "Or keep it in a drawer. Either way, it's yours now. You're my daughter, too." I fastened it around my neck, felt the cool metal settle against my skin. "Thank you for raising him the way you did." She patted my cheek. "He raised himself half the time, but he chose well with you." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Elias and I slipped away from the crowd for a moment, walked to the far end of the yard where the lilac bush my mother had planted still bloomed, purple and fragrant. He pulled me close, arms around my waist. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing the question he'd asked on New Year's Eve. "None," I whispered. "Only gratitude. For the storm. For surviving it. For finding you on the other side." We danced slowly in the grass. No music, but the wind and distant laughter from the tables. When the sky turned deep indigo, we rejoined everyone for one last toast. Ryan raised his glass. To Maya, who turned a nightmare into a masterclass in strength. And to Elias, who had the good sense to wait for the right ending. Everyone laughed. Glasses clinked. Fireflies began to blink in the bushes. Later, after the last guest left and the lights were dimmed, Elias and I sat on the porch swing again, same spot where we talked that first night after Miss Gladys passed. The ring on my finger caught the moonlight. He laced his fingers through mine. "Mrs. Thorne," he said softly, testing the name. I smiled. "Maya Vankelthorne. Or just Maya. Either way." We moved into a small house he owned on the north side a month later. Not the brownstone. I couldn't sell it. It stayed mine, a quiet legacy, but a cozy two-story with a wide front porch and a backyard big enough for a garden. Elias planted tomatoes and basil the first weekend. I added lavender because it reminded me of Mom. We painted the kitchen sage green, hung photos, ours, my parents', even one of Andre grinning beside his shop sign. Mornings became routine. Coffee on the porch, him reading blueprints while I reviewed audit files, quiet kisses before work. Evenings, cooking together. He got better at not burning things, walks around the neighborhood, talking about nothing and everything. Some nights we just sat in silence, comfortable, full silence, and that felt like the deepest intimacy. Andre visited once a month. We'd grill in the backyard, talk about his shop expanding, about the girl he'd started seeing. "She's patient like you, Maya." Ryan sent occasional texts. "Still got your backdoor skills if you ever need them again." I laughed and replied, "Hopefully never. But thanks." One afternoon, I ran into Jasmine at a supermarket in the Loop. She was thinner, hair shorter, no makeup, pushing a small cart with just a few items. When she saw me, she froze, like she'd seen a ghost. "Maya?" I nodded. "Hi." She looked down at her shoes. I moved to Milwaukee.
New job.
New start. I'm trying to be better. I know you don't owe me forgiveness." "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "You made a mistake. You paid for it. Learn from it. That's enough." She started crying, silent tears. "Thank you for not destroying me when you could have." I gave her a small nod and walked away. No anger left, just closure. Years later, 5, maybe 6, I stood in the kitchen of our house, watching Elias teach our daughter, adopted 2 years earlier, a bright-eyed girl named Lila, how to knead bread dough. Flour dust to her nose. She giggled when he pretended to sneeze dramatically. I leaned against the doorframe, ring still silver and simple on my finger, locket from his mother around my neck. Life hadn't been perfect. There were arguments, small ones, over burnt toast or whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. There were nights when old nightmares crept in. Terrence's face, the hospital beep, the note in the kitchenette, and Elias would wake with me, hold me until the shaking stopped, never asking me to explain. But the nightmares came less often. The scars faded to faint lines. Happiness wasn't loud fireworks. It was this: flour on the counter, a child's laugh, a man who chose me every day without fanfare. One evening, Lila asked, "Mommy, were you ever scared?" I looked at Elias across the table.
He smiled soft, knowing.
"Yes," I said.
Very.
But I learned that being scared doesn't mean staying scared. It means you get to choose what comes next. She nodded solemnly, like she understood. Later, Elias and I sat on our own porch swing, different house, same rhythm. Stars overhead. Lake breeze carrying distant city sounds. "You ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. "Every day," I whispered. "From a hospital folding chair to here. From lies to this." He kissed my temple. "No more storms." "Storms come," I said. "But we've got a good roof. And each other." The ring caught the moonlight again. Simple, steady, true. I had lost a marriage built on deception. Lost years to blind faith. Lost trust one thought I'd never regain. But I found something better. Myself, clear-eyed, resilient, whole. And love. Not the kind that demands sacrifice, but the kind that builds quietly, day by day, until it becomes home. Life is harsh. It takes without asking. But it also gives when you have the courage to open your hands again. I opened mine, and it gave me everything.